Hey, this is Dr. Mariza, and today I'm going to share with you why 85% of diets fail. Now, I don't know about you, but I grew up at a time where fad diets were the thing. And that's how I was taught to lose weight when I was younger. And in my 20s, they worked, right? The Atkins diet, Weight Watchers, calorie restriction, name it. The Master Cleanse. I tried all of them. And yes, I would lose a little bit of weight. But then when I went back to doing most of the regular things I did, I would put it right back on. Now, it got to a point where I entered my mid 30s and none of them worked anymore. I became weight resistant. And I got really curious about, what is the real driver of sustainable weight loss? And here's the deal. With an alarming stat that 70% of adults are either overweight or obese, and that over 50% of people this year alone tried to lose weight, and only 15% of people actually were successful in sustainably keeping the weight off, we have really got to look at what is truly working and what isn't. So when we're looking at diets in terms of creating sustainable weight loss and creating metabolic health, which is ultimately the name of the game, we have to look at three different criteria that a lot of diets just don't take into account. And that is our metabolism, our hormones, and our brain. So I first just want to start with our brain, right? When we go into a situation where we're doing an extreme diet, where we're doing a calorie deficit diet, where we're going down to like 1,300 calories or something like that, or we're doing some serious intermittent fasting, whatever it may look like, what we'll find is that the brain will get some survival or stress signals that we are losing too many calories. And the brain will ultimately send messages to the body via cravings, right? You remember you'll go a really long time without eating, or you'll significantly cut down those calories, and then you start getting these crazy, uncontrollable cravings, these killer cravings, right? Sugar cravings, salt cravings, carb cravings, and that is your body trying to protect itself, especially for us as women, when we are designed to have a humming metabolism so that if indeed we decide we want to have a baby, we've got enough reserves to make that happen. We have a tendency through our genetics and the way that our brain works, even our hormones, to hold on to whatever we've got in order to ride the wave of the calorie restriction. And that's why when it comes to restricting calories, we will see a little bit of a short-term gain. And often that's maybe due to losing water weight. But in the scheme of things, we end up putting that weight back on, or even more so. Gosh, I saw that so many times where I would drop my calories down by like 500 calories, and then I would end up gaining an extra 3 to 5 pounds on the back end after I was done with that diet. All the while, I was freaking miserable and really struggling the whole time. Now, the second facet of this is going to be our hormones. And one of the most important hormones that play a role here is going to be cortisol, and that is our survival hormone. And so when we are doing something extreme, like again, an Atkins back in the day, or extreme keto, or even calorie restriction, that really sends a message to our stress response system that we are in danger. And so what ultimately ends up happening is cortisol begins to kind of store, but it stores it in our belly fat. That's where we end up putting that stress weight is in our belly fat. And then what that ends up driving more insulin resistance. Not only does cortisol co-elevate hormones like insulin and thyroid hormone, it also co-elevates, belly fat as well. And so we end up seeing, not only do we have an increase of insulin resistance, blood sugar deregulation, and also potentially low thyroid function due to, burning out the thyroid, which ultimately, causes us to hold on to weight even longer, right? Because we have these hormones that are deregulated and a metabolism that isn't working properly that can lead to issues down the line. And then we've got the other hormone, the other kind of major player hormone when it comes to our metabolic health, and that is actually insulin. And what a lot of people do not understand is that we actually, in order for us to put weight on, we've got to become a little bit of insulin resistance. Insulin is a growth hormone. Insulin is a fat storage hormone. Insulin is a hormone that drives more weight gain. And so in order to address the elephant in the room, to actually lose weight in a sustainable way, we've got to get insulin more sensitive. And that has everything to do with stabilizing our blood sugar and making sure that our blood sugar curve is as flat as possible. And then the last hormone I always want to be looking out for is leptin resistance. Now, one of the ways that we become leptin resistant is one, we're either overweight or obese. That drives leptin resistance. The other thing that drives leptin resistance is going to be insulin resistance. It co-elevates leptin resistance. And so if we're already dealing with insulin resistance and we don't get that under control, we end up having this leptin resistance issue where we're supposed to use leptin to control our appetite. But what ends up happening when we become resistant to leptin is that we're always feeling hungry. Add in the cortisol component and the insulin resistance component, and your brain thinking you're in survival mode because you're not eating enough, you end up putting on the weight and you find yourself getting hungrier and hungrier because the body is trying to work against your strategy. And then the last thing I wanted to just mention was that we've got to look at our cellular energy and our mitochondrial energy. What is going on there? Is our mitochondria fully efficiently burning substrates like glucose and fat to make energy? Is it compromised in any way? Are we dealing with mitochondrial dysfunction? These are all the things that we got to be looking at. And drivers of mitochondrial dysfunction are going to be ultra-processed foods, sugar, crappy sleep every single night, feeling stressed, chemicals in our environment. Those are going to be things that are messing with our mitochondria that will then, no matter what kind of diet you're doing, unless we have mitochondria that are working properly and hormones that are working well with it, we just get stuck in this crazy weight resistance loop. And so the thing that I always work on with women when it comes to weight loss is always going to be, how do we improve your metabolic health? And there's major pillars when we're talking about that. The first pillar is we got to be regulating and getting your blood sugar balanced. Next, we got to drop that insulin resistance and get it sensitive. We got to create metabolically healthy meals. We got to work with your circadian rhythm and making sure that you're getting good sleep. And we got to ensure that your mitochondria are working properly. Those are really the tenets. And then the other thing I always like to focus on, which really fits perfectly with those areas, is ensuring that your gut and your liver are very supported, right? So we want to make sure that you are feeding your gut microbiome and you are supporting your liver, because these are major players in your metabolic health as well. And when you take all these things into consideration, and I know it may seem like a lot of things, but I promise it isn't that complicated once you've got the formula for it. Once you take all these things in consideration, then you start to see yourself losing weight sustainably and losing it over time, because we address the hormone component, we calmed down the stress system, we are able to repair your mitochondria, and we were able to ensure that your metabolism is more flexible. So you are moving from a fat burning state to a sugar burning state when your body needs to do so. And that's really the name of the game. And then when we put in the piece around the gut and liver, we're actually able to release fat while the liver and the gut can support it, so that fat melts away easily and you're not dealing with any level of toxic burden, because again, our fat often is holding on to toxins. It's a way of protecting us from the kind of the amount of toxicity, the toxic load that we're dealing with by living in this modern day world. Now, one of the things that I am super excited about is my Metabolism and Hormone Reset course, where I put everything that I talked about into this very comprehensive course where I am addressing every single one of those pillars, so that not only are you supporting your metabolic health for many years to come, but you are actually losing weight. I've had so many women go through this program with me kind of on an individual level and have lost, 10, 15, 20, 30 plus pounds, and in a way that really honored and nourished their body, which honestly is the name of the game. So please stay tuned as I break down what it looks like to really support your metabolic health.